What is Goods and Services Tax? GST, a latest review. GST is a single comprehensive tax that will subsume or overtake all other smaller indirect taxes on consumption like excise duty, service tax, etc. GST is a common tax levy practice in most developed countries. As the name suggests, the GST will be levied both on goods, that is manufacturing, and services. Now let us take a look at the nature and structure of GST. It would have a dual structure. 1. A central component levied and collected by the center, and 2. A state component administered by states. At the central level, it will subsume or overtake central excise duty, service tax, and additional custom duties. At the state level, it will include value-added tax, entertainment tax, luxury tax, lottery taxes, and electricity duty. The central government will have the exclusive power to levy and collect GST in the course of interstate trade or commerce or even imports. This will be known as integrated GST, that is IGST. For example, tobacco and tobacco products will be subject to GST. The center may also impose excise duty on tobacco. Now let us look at the products exempted from the purview of GST. Alcohol for human consumption has been exempted. Initially, GST will not apply to petroleum crude, high-speed diesel, motor spirit, that is petrol or natural gas, and aviation turbine fuel. The GST Council. The GST Council will decide when GST will be levied on them. Since GST involves both state and central finances, it becomes a concurrent subject. The Union Finance Minister will be heading this council as the chairman. There will be many contentious issues, retrograding, sharing, and implementation. The GST Council will consist of Union Minister of State in charge of Revenue or Finance, Minister in charge of Finance, or any other minister nominated by each state government. The GST Council will be making recommendations on taxes, cesses, and surcharges to be subsumed under the GST. Goods and services which may be subject to or exempt from GST. The threshold limit of turnover for application of GST or rates of GST. The model GST laws, principles of levy, apportionment of IGST, and principles related to place of supply. The GST Council may decide the mechanism for resolving disputes arising out of its recommendations. Now let us look at the advantages of GST. It speeds up economic growth of India as it will add about 1% to India's GDP growth. It replaces the cascading effect created by existing indirect taxes. The uniformity in tax regime with only one or two taxes rates across the supply chain as against multiple tax structure as of present. Improvement in cost competitiveness of goods and services in the international market. It will ease process of levy of tax, both seller as well as buyer. It will be levied by center in course of interstate trade or commerce. This provision impedes a key objective of GST. The GST regime aims to create a harmonized national market for goods and services, and the GST Bill reinforces this objective. Here are the highlights of the proposed constitution, the 122nd Amendment, that is GST Bill 2014. Since GST involves state and center subject and jurisdiction, it needs constitutional amendment. The bill amends the constitution to introduce the goods and services tax. Parliament and state legislatures will have concurrent powers to make laws on GST. The bill empowers the center to impose an additional tax of up to 1% on the interstate supply of goods for 2 years or more. This tax will accrue to states from where the supply originates. Parliament may, by law, provide compensation to states for any loss of revenue from the introduction of GST up to a 5-year period. What is preventing GST from becoming a reality? The GST Constitutional Amendment Bill was passed in the Lok Sabha in May 2015. It has been held up in the Rajya Sabha due to objections being raised by the opposition regarding the bill as well as issues with no direct connection to GST. The bill was also placed before a Rajya Sabha Select Committee which made its recommendations regarding changes to the bill. The cabinet cleared these changes. What are the objections from the opposition? The Congress wants a provision capping the GST rate at 18% to be added to the bill itself. It also wants to scrap the proposed 1% additional levy for manufacturing states. The reasons opposing additional tax levy are: the levy of any additional tax distorts the creation of a national market, as a product made in one state and sold in another would be more expensive than one made and sold within the same state. Also, the 1% tax will result in cascading of taxes. This effect will be magnified if the production and distribution chain passes through several states and if the 1% additional tax applies at each state. The burden of the cascading tax will be borne by the final consumer of the product. The third demand by the Congress was to change the composition of the GST Council. The proposed composition is for the Council to be 2/3 comprised from the states and 1/3 from the centre. The Congress wants the centre's share to be reduced to 1/4. This demand, however, was rejected by even the Rajya Sabha Standing Committee. Following could be interesting and relevant points for discussion from the point of view of written as well as interview. Will GST really make a breakthrough for economic growth in India? Considering ongoing debate on the introduction of GST Bill in Rajya Sabha, critically comment on important features of the bill. Critically analyze the structure, objectives and issues arising out of the goods and service tax system that the government wants to introduce in India.